In the early years of the 14th century, Scotland stood on the brink of obliteration. Its lords were divided, its castles occupied, its king hunted across glens and forests like a fugitive. The English crown claimed dominion over the realm, believing Scotland to be a rebellious province rather than an independent kingdom. And for a time, it seemed that this assessment might prove correct. English armies swept north, seizing fortresses, imposing governors, demanding oaths of loyalty. Many Scottish nobles submitted, many others fled. A few resisted and paid for it with their lives. Yet in this bleak landscape of occupation and despair, a new figure rose, a man neither born into unquestioned authority nor granted immediate loyalty, but forged through hardship, exile, and relentless determination. Robert Bruce, later known as Robert the Bruce, emerged from the chaos not merely as a claimant to the throne, but as the embodiment of a nation's will to survive. He would lead Scotland not through sheer numbers, not through wealth, but through an understanding of terrain, mobility, morale, and timing that would reshape the balance of power in medieval Britain. By 1314, Bruce had reclaimed most of Scotland's strongholds, driving the English back to a handful of fortified positions. But one fortress mattered above all others: Stirling Castle. Located at the crossing point between the Highland North and the Lowland South, Stirling was the strategic heart of Scotland. Whoever held Stirling held the kingdom, and Stirling was about to become the focal point of a confrontation that would echo through centuries. Across the border, King Edward II of England faced a problem that struck at the core of his authority. The garrison at Stirling Castle, commanded by Sir Philip Mowbray, had agreed to surrender if not relieved by midsummer. To allow such a key fortress to fall without contest would be an unforgivable humiliation. Parliament, nobles, and rival factions would see it as weakness, and Edward, already criticized for favoritism and mismanagement, could not risk further perception of incompetence. He responded in the only way a medieval monarch could, by raising one of the largest armies England had ever sent into Scotland. From the shires and towns of northern England came infantry levies by the thousands. From the great families of the realm came armored knights, destriers shimmering beneath polished steel barding. From Wales came archers whose longbows had terrified opponents for generations. Chroniclers estimate the English host at nearly 20,000, over triple the number Bruce could field. It was an army intended not just to relieve a castle, but to crush Scotland once and for all. Its size alone spoke of a king's fury, of a kingdom's desire to impose final order, of a belief that resistance could be extinguished through overwhelming force. To Edward's commanders, the coming battle seemed predetermined. Numbers, armor, cavalry, and discipline were all on England's side. But numbers alone do not decide battles, and the fields beneath Stirling would soon reveal a truth older than kingdoms, that courage, intelligence, and understanding of the land can overturn even the mightiest of armies. Robert Bruce understood the gravity of the coming confrontation. He had spent years avoiding pitched battles against larger English forces, preferring ambushes, guerrilla raids, and swift strikes that exploited mobility. He knew that to face England head-on in open ground was to invite destruction. Yet he also knew that Stirling could not fall back into enemy hands. He needed a battlefield where numbers would count for less, where cavalry would falter, and where discipline would break. He found such a place near the small stream known as the Bannockburn, just south of Stirling. At first glance, the landscape seemed unremarkable, a mixture of woodland, marshy patches, meadows, and narrow roads. But to Bruce, it was a carefully constructed trap. The terrain was naturally constricted, funneling any advancing army into progressively tighter spaces. To the east lay marshland, soft underfoot and dangerous for heavy horses. To the west rose the slopes toward the Tour Wood. Between these features, the dry, firm ground suitable for cavalry was shockingly narrow. Bruce ordered the digging of pits, camouflaged, sharpened, and deadly. He placed schiltrons, dense, bristling formations of spearmen where cavalry would be forced to charge in tight, predictable lines. He positioned his men so that, should the English be pushed back, they would stumble into the soft earth behind them, collapsing formations and sowing chaos. What England believed would be an open battlefield was, in truth, a carefully engineered choke point, a natural labyrinth shaped by time and perfected by strategy. But Bruce's greatest weapon was not the land, it was the men who stood upon it. 6,000 Scots, outnumbered, poorly equipped by comparison, many without armor, were nevertheless bound together by something no English levy could match, the belief that they were fighting not for a lord or a wage, but for their country's survival. On the night before the fighting began, torches flickered across the English encampment like a sea of stars. Chroniclers spoke of tents stretching as far as the eye could see, of horses neighing restlessly, of knights tightening straps and checking lances. The English army was confident. They believed that the Scots would scatter at the first charge. They believed the coming battle would be swift. Across the stream, the Scots made a different sort of preparation. Their camp was smaller, quieter, more disciplined. Many slept on the bare earth, their weapons beside them, their armor light. But they did not fear what was to come. They trusted their king, trusted the ground beneath their feet, trusted the formations they had drilled into muscle memory. On the morning of June 23rd, the English vanguard advanced through the narrow approach near the New Park woodlands. Their first encounter would set the tone for everything that followed. Sir Henry de Bohun, an English knight of noble lineage and proud heritage, spotted a solitary figure riding ahead of the Scottish lines. It was Robert Bruce himself, mounted not on a heavy war horse, but on a small palfrey, wearing light armor, carrying only an axe. De Bohun saw an opportunity, a chance to end the war with a single blow. Lowering his lance, he charged. Bruce waited. At the last moment, he sidestepped, rose in his stirrups, and brought his axe down upon the knight's helm with such force that the weapon shattered in his hand. De Bohun fell, killed instantly. To the Scots, the moment was electrifying. To the English, it was an omen. The skirmishes that followed further revealed the inadequacy of the English vanguard in such terrain. Scottish spearmen held firm. English knights attempted charges, but found themselves funneled into tight spaces, unable to maneuver. As evening approached, both armies prepared for the full confrontation that all knew would come with the dawn. June 24th, Midsummer's Day, opened with rising heat and tension. Edward's massive host began crossing the Bannockburn, pressing toward the open ground they believed lay beyond. But instead of open ground, they entered a bottleneck so tight that cavalry could not deploy and infantry could not advance without shoving those ahead of them. Bruce gave the signal. Scottish schiltrons surged forward, not passively waiting as defensive blocks, but advancing like moving fortresses of spears. This aggressive use of schiltrons shocked the English, who were accustomed to stationary formations. English cavalry attempted to ride them down, but found themselves crashing into walls of sharpened ash spears. Horses reared, fell, and trampled their own lines. The English archers, who might have broken the schiltrons, could not take position. Their line of fire was blocked by their own troops, pressed helplessly into the killing ground. The Scots pushed harder. Every step forward reduced English space. Every fallen horse or man created obstacles. The pits Bruce had ordered dug now claimed victims. Panic began to spread among the English ranks as knights struggled to free themselves from the crush. Men were packed so tightly that many could not lift their weapons. Some suffocated where they stood, trapped between comrades and the soft earth. The Bannockburn, shallow though it was, became a grave for those attempting to retreat. And then came the moment that shattered English morale completely. The appearance of the Scottish small folk, camp followers and non-combatants, who from a distance looked like fresh reinforcements cresting the hill. To English eyes already blinded by fear, it appeared that the Scots had been holding a reserve. The line broke, panic surged, knights fled, infantry dissolved. Edward himself barely escaped, abandoning the field and the wounded remnants of his army. When the chaos finally subsided, the field lay strewn with the dead. Nobles, knights, men-at-arms, and foot soldiers who had marched north, believing they were part of an unstoppable force. The Scots, against all expectations, had won a decisive victory. They had done so not through greater numbers nor superior equipment, but through strategy, cohesion, terrain, and leadership. Bannockburn was not the end of the war, but it was the moment when Scotland's independence became more than an aspiration. It became a reality acknowledged across Europe. The victory transformed Robert the Bruce from a contested king into a national hero. It reshaped Scottish identity. It forced England to reconsider its approach to conquest, and it stands to this day as one of the most extraordinary examples of an outnumbered army defeating a superior foe through intelligence and will. The story of Bannockburn is not simply the tale of a battle, but the story of how strategy can outmatch strength, how conviction can withstand oppression, and how a smaller force can overcome overwhelming odds when led by a commander who understands both his men and the ground they stand upon. The fields near Stirling have long since quieted. The Bannockburn flows gently through meadows where no swords clash and no war cries rise, but the memory remains. It remains in the songs, in the epics, in the pride of a people who remember that on those fields 6,000 Scots, farmers, fishermen, minor nobles, veterans, and young men who had never fought before, stood against a great empire and prevailed. They fought for their land, for their freedom, for a future that would not be dictated by another crown, and they succeeded. Bannockburn endures not as a relic of medieval war, but as a timeless reminder that the destiny of nations can hinge on a single day, a single moment, a single choice. It reminds us that courage is not measured in numbers, that strength is not measured in steel, and that the will of a people determined to survive can overturn the mightiest of adversaries.